She screamed so loud it cut through the night like glass. Two cops shrieking of booze and authority yanked her out of the car, her seatbelt still tangled around her waist. Her dress tore with a sharp rip as her head smacked against the cruiser's hood. The metal cold and merciless, she begged, kicked, fought like hell. One officer pinned her wrists down, pressing his forearm into her neck. The other slid behind her. The third stood a few feet away, laughing, drunk, red-eyed, unbothered. Flashing blue lights danced across the empty highway. No witnesses, no dashcam, just the sound of insects and a woman's muffled screams fading into the trees. When it was over, they left her, their legs twisted, dress bloodied, face bruised and half buried in gravel. They didn't even check if she was still breathing. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the doorbell rang, barefoot, in sweatpants, and an FBI Academy from 20 years ago. Marcus Hayes opened the door with sleep in his eyes and his wedding ring still on his finger. He was expecting her to come back with groceries and a stupid story about the line at the gas station. Instead, a uniformed officer looked down and said 5 words that shattered everything. "We found a body, female, black." The rest blurred mile. Marker 42, unresponsive. No ID, but Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He collapsed before the sentence could end. His knees hit the floor. The walls around him began to spin. He wasn't just hearing the worst night of his life. He was falling into it. And the men who did this, they had no idea who they just woke up. He wasn't just hearing the worst night of his life. He was falling into it. 16 hours earlier. The morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds, soft and golden, kissing the worn edges of old cabinets and warming the room with the kind of peace that made you forget the world could ever turn cruel. Marcus Hayes stood barefoot on the cold tiles, flipping pancakes with a precision only a former FBI agent could bring to breakfast. His wife, Alana, leaned on the counter behind him, sipping her coffee, watching him with the kind of smile that carried years. Not just love, but friendship, history, wars won, grief survived, a bond forged through storms. "You're burning them again," she teased, nudging him with her elbow. "They're not burned," he said, flipping one onto her plate. "There's a difference." She grinned and took a bite anyway. He watched her chew like she was a miracle, because she was. The plan was simple. Their anniversary was in 2 weeks, and for once, they wanted quiet. No fancy hotels, no city lights, just the two of them, a fishing cabin in Savannah, and enough wine to forget they were aging. "I booked the boat rental," Marcus said between sips of orange juice. "You can catch fish, I'll catch a nap." "You mean I'll catch the fish, and you'll catch a sunburn?" The way she laughed, God, if he had known it would be the last time he'd hear it in person. A soft ding interrupted the moment, her phone. "Sean says he made the dean's list again." Alana's voice lit up as she read the message from their son at college. "He's thinking about switching to pre-law." Marcus chuckled. Smart kid, just like his mother. Outside, their neighbor, Mrs. Garrett, waved from across the lawn, her little beagle tugging at the leash. Alana waved back, mouthing a cheerful morning. Through the window, it was one of those rare days where everything aligned: the weather, the mood, the marriage, the life. A day so smooth, it made you forget how fast everything could break. "I'm just gonna run to the store real quick," Alana said, rinsing her mug. "We're out of creamer, and I want to cook something special tonight." Marcus looked up from his laptop. "Take the black SUV, taillights out on the other one." She paused, keys in hand. "Marcus, we've had that taillight out for 2 weeks, and that's exactly how long I've been asking you to let me fix it." She rolled her eyes, kissed him once on the forehead, and said, "I'll be right back." Those were her last words. She walked out the front door like it was any other Tuesday afternoon. Grocery list tucked in her pocket, card in her wallet, laughter still echoing in the kitchen, and then silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace but a missing piece. The hours passed. He figured maybe she stopped for gas, got caught in traffic, maybe ran into someone she knew. By 8 p.m. he texted. By 9 o'clock he called. Voicemail. By 10:30 he called again. Still no answer. A small tug in his gut, but he shook it off. He'd seen enough bad endings in his time with the Bureau. He knew how panic could cloud reason. She was fine. She had to be dropped by midnight. The food on the stove had gone cold. By 1 a.m. the living room light was still on, casting long shadows on an untouched dinner table. Her favorite wine, uncorked but unopened. Then came the knock. And that single moment where the universe shifted without warning, cracking reality down the middle like ice breaking over a frozen lake. Later, Marcus would remember the way the pancakes had smelled that morning, the soft hum of her laugh, the sunlight on her cheek, the words "I'll be right back." Ordinary things, innocent, safe. The kind of things that only hurt when they become memory, when they become the last things. And somewhere out there, 3 men were sleeping off the stink of liquor and blood, never knowing what they'd just set in motion. Because Marcus Hayes wasn't just a grieving husband, he was a man who knew how to disappear and kill without leaving a trace. Because Marcus Hayes wasn't just a grieving husband, he was a man who knew how to disappear and kill without leaving a trace. But that came later. Right now she was still breathing, driving, smiling, maybe, drumming her fingers on the steering wheel as the radio played something soft and nostalgic. The SUV hummed beneath her as she turned down Route 11, the sky just starting to dim, streaked with gold and lavender. Grocery list tucked between the seats, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching for her phone. A text half-typed to Marcus. "Do you want apple pie or red and blue?" Lights exploded in her rearview mirror. She blinked, looked again. A patrol cruiser. No sirens, no urgency, just slow menace. She eased the car to the shoulder, rolling down the window as the vehicle stopped behind her. 2 officers stepped out, white, broad-shouldered. One was clearly swaying as he walked at her, adjusted his belt, swaggering like the highway belonged to him. Neither wore body cameras, even in ma'am, the taller one drawled. "You know why we stopped you?" Alana forced a polite smile. "I don't, officer." Tail light. "Right one's out." "That can't be right. My husband just stepped out of the vehicle." The words hit hard, too fast. No warning, no explanation. "I'm sorry, I ask why step out now?" Something shifted in the air. She could feel it, a kind of cold that had nothing to do with weather. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel a second too long. "Ma'am, do not make this difficult." She opened the door slowly, got out, and the moment her heels hit the gravel, the nightmare began. Dashcam footage later showed only the cruiser idling, then static. 90 seconds of scrambled data. No audio, no visuals. The department would later call it a technical glitch. The 3rd officer on the scene, Ray Dixon, radioed in that the suspect had resisted arrest, attempted to flee, and sustained injuries during pursuit. His voice was calm, measured, a man reading from a script. But when Alana's body was mile marker 42, exactly 7 minutes from their house, none of that made sense. Her clothes were torn, her face swollen, dried blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. Her hands were bruised, nails cracked, like she'd tried to fight back. There were ligature marks on her wrists, gravel embedded in her knees, and in her right hand, still curled in rigor mortis, was the grocery receipt. 3 items: heavy cream, rosemary, and frozen pie crust. She never even made it into the store. The police filed a report under vehicular accident following arrest resistance. Claimed she slipped trying to flee custody and struck her head on a rock. The autopsy, expedited and closed within 48 hours, listed cranial impact as cause of death. No mention of rape, no mention of trauma to the pelvic region, no mention of the defensive wounds on her arms. But Marcus knew what a lie looked like. He'd trained men to interrogate, to torture, to erase. The officer who delivered the news stood awkwardly in the doorway, reading off a clipboard, never once saying Alana's name, just the victim, just female, approximately 38, just words that meant nothing. Marcus listened, nodded, eyes hollow, hands still, and then he asked to see the body. They tried to tell him it wasn't a good idea, that she wasn't presentable, that it might be traumatizing. He insisted. They led him down a corridor lined with buzzing fluorescents and antiseptic lies, pulled back the sheet, and there she was, his wife, his whole world. Her face battered, but still her. Her lips parted as if caught in mid-sentence, her wedding ring missing. Marcus stood there, motionless, for exactly 47 seconds. Then he turned to the coroner and said, quietly, "She didn't fall." The man didn't reply. "She didn't trip. She didn't resist. Someone did this. Someone raped her." "We can't say that for certain, Mr. Hayes." "I can." The silence that followed was heavier than grief. It was fury buried under 1,000 pounds of training, of discipline, of secrets he wasn't supposed to use outside of classified missions. He walked out without another word. By morning, the news story was up on every local site. Black woman dies after resisting arrest in traffic stop. Officers claimed woman became aggressive after being asked to exit her vehicle. Alcohol not a factor for either party, says police spokesperson. No body cam footage available due to tech malfunction. They buried her 3 days later. Closed casket. No autopsy photos were released to the public. Internal Affairs issued no suspensions. Case resolved. Closure denied. And in the stillness of that final night, After the last mourner had left, and the casserole dishes had cooled, Marcus returned to his basement. He unlocked the drawer where he kept his pastor's badge, his field notes, the burner phone, the encrypted laptop. He stared at the wedding photo on his wall, and then, without a word, he started pinning names to a board. 3 names, 3 uniforms, 3 dead men walking, because he knew what they didn't. Justice was never blind. Sometimes, she just needed to remember who taught her how to aim, because he knew what they didn't. Justice was never blind. Sometimes, she just needed to remember who taught her how to aim. Marcus Hayes didn't sleep for the first 72 hours after the funeral. He just sat in the basement, his sanctuary, his war room, staring at the evidence board he'd started building with shaking hands and eyes that refused to blink. Photos of the officers, printouts of falsified reports, screenshots of dashcam logs that mysteriously ended at 6:42 p.m., an autopsy summary he'd requested then stolen because the official copy had entire paragraphs blacked out. In the center of the board, Alana's photo, smiling, alive, framed, in red string and grief. But grief wasn't the only thing haunting him. The nightmares had returned. The same ones from Bosnia, from Guantanamo, from ops that were classified so deep even the CIA couldn't breathe on them. Dead girls in desert ditches, screaming civilians, children stepping on mines. Alana's face had joined them now, her voice strangled and distant. "Help me, Marcus," she'd whisper from behind his eyelids. "Why didn't you help me?" He jolted awake on the basement floor more than once, drenched in sweat, sometimes holding a gun. Twice he found himself halfway to his old bureau office before realizing he no longer worked there. The world was wrong, bent, and no one else seemed to notice. He tried to go the legal route first. He still believed in the system at least enough to give it one last chance. He filed complaints, met with a civil rights attorney who smiled sadly and said, "This is going to be uphill." The state police commissioner sent a form letter. "We understand your loss and take allegations seriously. We are reviewing." Nothing happened. Then the media began their smear campaign. Sources say victim had history of anxiety. Police describe erratic behavior at scene. Was the traffic stop more complicated than it seems? They painted her as unstable, angry, dangerous, a stereotype repackaged in passive voice and white font on blue backgrounds, uncooperative, agitated, failed to follow lawful commands. And the public, like always, swallowed the lie. In comment sections and on Facebook threads, strangers typed things like, "Sad, but if she'd just complied, what was she doing alone at night? Something doesn't add up." Marcus read every word, every lie, every excuse. His hands trembled so violently he dropped his coffee. The mug shattered at his feet. He didn't pick up the pieces. Internal Affairs closed the case in 6 days. No charges, no investigation. Lack of sufficient evidence was the phrase they used. 6 days. That's all his wife's life was worth to them. Friends began to pull away. Calls stopped. Invitations vanished. A colleague from his FBI years, a man who once carried him out of a gunfight, sent a text. "You need to move on, brother. She wouldn't want this." The final blow came from his own church. Pastor Will, a kind man who had baptized their son, visited with a Bible in hand and pain in his eyes. "You have to forgive them, Marcus," he said gently. "Not for their sake, for yours." Marcus stared at him like he was a stranger, like the man had just asked him to forget she ever lived. "Forgiveness," Marcus said, voice low, "is earned." He never went back to that church again. Days bled into nights. He stopped eating, stopped shaving. His face hollowed out, cheekbones sharp beneath sagging skin. His beard grew in patches. He looked like a ghost trapped in his own house. He heard things, saw things, doors creaking when no one else was home. Alana's perfume drifting through the hallway, a song she used to hum playing faintly from the kitchen radio, though it was never on. One night, he swore he saw her reflection behind him in the bathroom mirror. He spun around, heart thudding. Nothing, just a towel rack, and his own eyes, bloodshot and rimmed with madness. The FBI had taught him how to survive wars and to resist torture, how to kill in 3 seconds with a pen. But nothing had prepared him for this, for the silence, for the helplessness, for the guilt, because deep down, he blamed himself. He should have driven her that night, should have insisted on fixing the taillight, should have known something. Instead, he let her walk out the door with a smile and a shopping list. He was slipping, drowning in memories, in rage, in noise no one else could hear. So he did the only thing that gave him purpose. He built the wall. The evidence board became a living thingy, expanding, breathing, growing veins of red string and post-it notes. Maps marked with times and locations, gas station security stills, surveillance footage from traffic cams, copies of police dispatch, logs. He hacked databases, spoofed IDs, called in favors from old contacts who owed him blood. He pieced together the truth the department tried to bury. The officers' shifts overlapped for 3 nights before the stop-off-duty drinking logged. At a known dive bar, Officer Mullins had to pass misconduct complaints, both sealed. Officer Dixon was disciplined last year for excessive force. Sergeant Lanning had ties to a deputy in the coroner's office. A pattern emerged. Not just negligence, conspiracy. He pinned their faces side by side, Mullins, Dixon, Lanning. Then he added another photo, his own, centered above them. The man they woke up. The one they didn't know they trained. The ghost they thought had buried his past with his badge. He stood there one night, staring at the wall, and whispered, "You didn't kill my wife. Not in the literal sense. Not just, you killed yourselves, you just didn't know it yet." And for the first time in weeks, he slept. Not peacefully, not long, but without nightmares. Because the man who once believed in the system had died with his wife. The man who rose from that wreckage, he believed in nothing but justice. And justice now would wear his face. The man who rose from that wreckage, he believed in nothing but justice. And justice now would wear his face. But to bring down a system, Marcus Hayes had to understand its rot. So he began with the men. Not just names on a report. Not just uniforms or badges. People, flawed, twisted, shaped by choices and fear and cowardice. Killers hiding behind policy and paperwork. The first one was easy to track: Officer Trent Mullins, a name that came up over and over again in internal memos with missing pages. A man with a reputation. Mullins lived on the outskirts of town, in a single-story ranch house that looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint since Desert Storm. He kept to himself, drove a beat-up truck with faded Marine Corps stickers, yard full of beer cans, porch light always on but flickering. Marcus sat in his car across the street for 2 nights, watching. Mullins came home late, always alone, always stumbling. On the second night, Marcus saw him vomit in his own flower bed, wipe his mouth with his sleeve, then sit on the porch and light a cigarette with trembling hands. A sad man, a broken one, but not an innocent one. Mullins was ex-military, deployed 3 times, came back with more scars than medals and a temper no one could leash. He believed in order, his kind of order, the kind that said yes, sir, or got a baton to the ribs. He had once told a rookie during training, "Sometimes the street doesn't need kindness, it needs correction." That rookie later quit the force. Mullins had 2 complaints against him for unnecessary force, both magically dismissed after peer review. One involved a teenager slammed against a patrol car for jaywalking. The other, a Latina woman tasered in a parking lot for non-compliance. Both victims vanished from public record after settlements were paid. Mullins believed what he did to Alana wasn't wrong. In his mind, it was just another lesson for someone who acted up. In another life, Marcus Mitov felt pity for him. But not now. Officer Ray Dixon was harder to hate, and that made him more dangerous. He was only 27, no military background, joined the force fresh out of community college, baby-faced, always jittery, never quite fit in. Marcus found footage of him in training, hesitant during drills, flinching at gunfire, too slow on tactical exercises. He wasn't violent, just spineless, the kind of man who folded under pressure, who'd rather look the other way than speak out. Marcus dug deeper. Dixon's social media was squeaky clean, almost suspiciously so, but Marcus knew how to find the cracks. He found a private Discord server where officers shared off-the-record jokes. Dark ones, racist ones, posts that called protesters roaches, and memes mocking black women as mouthy threats. Dixon never posted, but he liked them, reacted with laughing emojis, gave his silent approval, and then came the body cam files only, partially recovered through a backdoor Marcus had access to from his bureau days. Dixon stood there the whole time during Alana's stop. He never touched her, never stopped it either. He looked away when her screams turned to whimpers, wiped sweat from his brow as if disgusted with himself, but still said nothing. Later he'd be the one to radio it in. Suspect became aggressive, attempted to flee, was injured during apprehension. Every word soaked in fear, not of her, of what they'd done. Marcus stared at his file for hours. Ray Dixon had a fiancée they were expecting. He had a dog. He volunteered at his church's food drive on weekends. A good man, maybe once, but good men who stand by while evil happens. They're not men, at all, just shadows wearing skin. Then there was Sergeant Kyle Lanning, the spider at the center of the web. Marcus had dealt with men like him before, smart, clean-cut, polite in public, poisonous behind closed doors. The kind of man who never raised his voice because he didn't need to. His power came from silence, from red tape, from knowing exactly which file to delete, which button to push, which person to call. Lanning had been with the department 18 years. Never once written up, never investigated. His record was so clean it smelled of bleach. But that kind of perfection, Marcus knew. Better, it was always fake. He uncovered more by watching patterns than chasing paper. Lanning signed off on over 24 incident reports that ended in accidental injury involving Black or Latino suspects. He never wrote the reports, just approved them. His signature was always there, like a quiet curse. When Marcus dug into Alana's death, Lanning's fingerprints were everywhere, just not literally. He was the one who filed the glitch notice on the dashcam system. He was the one who made the call to internal affairs, recommending the case be closed. He was the one who showed up to the coroner's office the night before the autopsy was signed off. Unauthorized visit, logged by a sleepy intern. Lanning didn't need to get his hands dirty. He had soldiers like Mullins, cowards like Dixon. He just pulled strings, burned tapes, buried truth. Marcus remembered him from years ago, a seminar on interagency cooperation. Lanning had been a guest speaker. "We don't need to fix the system," he had said then. "We just need to know how to make it work for us." Marcus hadn't paid much attention at the time. Now he couldn't stop thinking about that smug smile. The three of them weren't evil in the cartoonish sense. They didn't wear fangs. They didn't twirl mustaches. They didn't cackle when they left Alana bleeding on the gravel. They just didn't care. To Mullins, she was an example. To Dixon, she was a mistake. To Lanning, she was a problem to be erased. But to Marcus, she was everything. And now they were everything he had left to live for. He pinned their photos beneath Alana's on the wall, drew lines between them, labeled each with a single word. Mullins, force; Dixon, fear; Lanning, control. And above it all, in thick black marker, they think they're safe. He stepped back and stared at their faces. Not monsters, just men. And that was exactly why they needed to be destroyed. Because if men like them could do this and walk free, then there was no system worth saving. Only one worth burning to the ground. And Marcus Hayes had just lit the match. He no longer moved like a grieving husband. He moved like a shadow with purpose. Gone were the sleepless nights on the basement floor. Gone was the hollow stare and trembling hands. Now, everything he did had rhythm, clarity, precision, like muscle memory waking from a long hibernation. He dug into his garage, behind the false wall he'd built 10 years ago when he'd retired. Out came the black hard case, the one with 2 biometric locks and a cold steel spine. Inside, burner phones, encrypted drives, ghost IDs, SIM cards, from 5 different carriers, surveillance tools still years ahead of civilian tech. He wasn't just chasing justice anymore. He was building it piece by lethal piece. Step 1. Reconnect. Quietly, Marcus knew who to trust and who to stay away from. Some former bureau contacts owed him favors. Some feared what he knew. Others had buried guilt of their own and would do anything to wash it away. He reached out using old secure channels, encrypted emails, flash drop sites, even dead drops in Washington, D.C. within days. He had access to the FBI's closed facial recognition networks, private DMV feeds, traffic cams, and department HR logs. One former tech analyst, now freelancing in Singapore, sent him a digital skeleton, key to access local precinct servers. Another who'd vanished into the private black ops world, mailed him a briefcase-sized scrambler that could clone a phone signal from 2 blocks away. Marcus smiled when it arrived. Old ghosts still respected the deadliest among them. Step 2. Patterns. Habits. Weakness. He watched them, from inside tinted rental cars, from park benches, from forgotten rooftops with a telephoto lens and thermal scope. Mullins was a creature of rage and whiskey. He drank himself into oblivion by sundown every 3rd night, always at the Grizzly, a bar where the jukebox wheezed and no one asked questions. He left the bar drunk, always alone, always driving. He talked to himself, yelled at the radio, sometimes cried behind the wheel. His pain was visible, but Marcus felt nothing for it. Dixon was different, more careful now, paranoid even. He checked over his shoulder in parking lots, took different routes home. He'd lost weight, grew facial hair, deleted his social media, but Marcus saw right through the act. He still visited his fiancée every Thursday night, still walked his dog at 6:30 a.m. sharp, still ordered the same goddamn sandwich from the same deli turkey. No mustard, extra lettuce. Lanning was the most polished, untouchable. He drove a Lexus, wore iron shirts, attended city council meetings, with a handshake and a rehearsed grin, but Marcus knew the real him. Every Thursday, Lanning met a young woman in a Holiday Inn on Route 9, not his wife. He paid in cash. He used an alias. Marcus took photos, videos, audio. Step 3, let them feel it. The games began with whispers. Mullins came out of the bar one night to find his tires slashed. A week later, he received an untraceable envelope in the mail, a photo of him passed out in his truck with a red circle drawn around the bottle in his lap. Next came the letter. She screamed. I recorded it. There's more coming. Dixon's dog ran off one morning, gate mysteriously left open. When he found it 2 hours later, there was a USB drive hanging from its collar. Inside, a low-quality edit of the night Alana died. A single glitchy clip recovered from traffic. Camera footage, no audio, just Dixon standing there, watching, frozen. His fiancée left him 2 days later. He didn't explain why. And Lanning, he woke up one morning to find his Lexus spray-painted. Not with vulgarities, but with a date. 6/18. She didn't trip. And underneath it, in red, you erase evidence I created. Marcus didn't need to kill them, not yet. He just needed them to rot from the inside first. Fear was more efficient than bullets, and slower. But the deeper he sank into this mission, the more the line began to blur. Was he seeking justice or feeding something darker? He caught his reflection in a convenience store window one night, unshaven, cold-eyed. A man with no light left behind his stare. Was this what Alana would have wanted? He thought of her voice, soft and calm, even in arguments. You can't control everything, Marcus. Let some things go. But she didn't let go when she was pulled from that car. She fought, she bled. She died alone while they laughed. No, he wasn't letting this go. He told himself it wasn't vengeance. It was balance. And sometimes, balance had to be bought in blood. He started recording everything, his thoughts, his plans, his observations. He used a burner phone to capture audio logs, stored on a hidden drive. Mullins is unstable. A push is all it takes. Dixon regrets it, but regret doesn't. By redemption, Lanning, he's the head of the snake. Cut him last. Make him watch. His voice was calm in the recordings. Professional, clinical, but inside, a storm brewed. He no longer dreamed of Alana in white dresses or sunlight. Now she appeared bloodied, whispering words he couldn't hear, pointing at people Marcus hadn't. Yet, punished, the next step was inevitable and irreversible. Marcus drove out to an abandoned cabin 2 hours north, once used as a safe house during undercover ops. There he built a makeshift command center, drones, burner laptops, license plate scanners, a war room away from the world. He called it the Ground Zero Room. He would return here between missions, monitor chatter, change identities, scrub traces. He created fake identities with DMV level precision, insurance agents, real estate appraisers, home security reps. He used them to get inside their homes, not physically, just close enough. Just enough to leave fingerprints without touching anything. He tampered with their routines, moved things, adjusted thermostats, left radios on. Small things, insignificant until they weren't, until they started questioning reality. Mullins told a friend he thought someone was breaking in. He boarded his windows. Dixon bought a handgun, fumbled with it at the range. Lanning changed his entire alarm system, but Marcus had already bypassed it. They were cracking. And Marcus was becoming the very thing he hunted once. A ghost, a threat without a face, a reckoning. But sometimes, in the stillness of his hideout, when the night was quiet and the revenge paused, he wondered, was he still a man? Or just the weapon left behind after a system failed him? He stared at the final photo of Alana, now faded from constant handling. Her smile was soft, trusting, hopeful. She'd believed in people. He no longer did. And yet her voice echoed, "Don't become what you hate." But what if what he hated was the only thing that could destroy them? Marcus didn't have the answer, but he had the next move. And in this game, he'd already made sure it would be their last. Marcus Hayes had become a ghost. But ghosts cast shadows. And now someone had noticed. It started with a car. A white Ford Taurus, parked across from his safe house 3 nights in a row. Never moving, no plate on the front, a faint flicker of movement behind tinted glass. The same cigarette lit at the same time, just after sunset, not local, not random. He tested it, drove a rental 3 counties away, looped back through a mountain trail, and returned 5 hours later. The Taurus was gone but came back the next morning. Someone was watching. And not just him. The phone call came at 2:11 a.m., his son, Sean, sobbing on the other end. Dad, someone was in my dorm. They trashed it. My laptop's gone. They left. A note. What did it say? A pause, a sniffle. Your father makes enemies. Be careful you're not next. Marcus sat very still, the words cutting deeper than any bullet. He'd kept Sean out of it, never mentioned the case, never showed him the board, the photos, the war he was building brick by brick. He thought silence was protection, but now, the war had come knocking. Sean wasn't hurt yet, but he was shaken, terrified, asking questions Marcus couldn't answer. I'm coming to get you, Marcus said, but Sean stopped him. No, if they see you, they'll know you're alive. The call ended in silence, the kind that wrapped around Marcus's chest and didn't let go. 2 days later, Marcus got a message slipped under his motel door, handwritten, no return address. They're on to you. One of your own gave you up. It was unsigned, but Marcus recognized the handwriting. Special Agent Craig Delaney. They served together in Quantico. Spent 6 months embedded with a narco-terrorist cell in Colombia. Delaney had saved Marcus's life, once dragging him, blood-soaked and broken, through a jungle with nothing but a Glock and a prayer. But that was a lifetime ago. Marcus pulled a satellite image of Delaney's suburban home, studied the backyard, mapped the blind spots, and waited. 3 days later, he showed up in Delaney's garage at 3 a.m., silent as fog. The older agent nearly dropped his coffee. Jesus, shiristi Marcus. Don't Jesus me, Marcus said, gun raised but unshaken. You gave them my location. Delaney didn't deny it. I didn't know what else to do. They came to me with questions. They knew everything, the safe house, your aliases, even your burner activity. So you gave them my head on a plate. I gave them misdirection, Delaney hissed. I told them you were in Detroit. I was buying you time, Marcus. Marcus stared for a long moment, then lowered the gun. You're lucky I still believe in partial truths. Delaney exhaled, but the damage was done. Marcus was compromised. That night he burned the Ground Zero room to the ground. Every file, every trace, gone in smoke and ash. The fire spread fast, the explosion staged to look like a propane accident. By morning, the cabin was just embers and blackened trees. And inside the ashes, a fake suicide note, carefully placed in a waterproof case. I couldn't carry her loss anymore. I'm sorry. Signed, Marcus Hayes. It worked. The news reported his death within 24 hours. Retired FBI agent, devastated widower, presumed suicide, a sad ending to a tragic chapter. The system exhaled, and Marcus disappeared completely. He moved at night now, a ghost among ghosts. Traveled in stolen cars, paid in cash, slept in barns, abandoned homes, and gas station bathrooms. He grew leaner, meaner, his beard thickened, hiding the man he used to be. His eyes turned to steel. No more letters, no more games. Now came the pain. Mullins was first. He'd gotten sloppy. The fear had grown into paranoia. He was drinking more, talking to himself in public. One night he pulled a gun on a teenager walking too close to his driveway. The department suspended him, pending psych ev. Marcus didn't wait for the paperwork to clear. He snuck into Mullins' garage one night and drained the brake fluid from his truck, then left a photo on the dashboard Elena's autopsy report, with the words, "You remember this," scrawled in red. The next day, Mullins crashed into a ditch at 60 miles per hour. He survived, broke 3 ribs, but when he woke up, there was a voice recording playing on repeat from a hidden speaker Marcus had planted in his coat pocket. Alana screams. Not real, of course, AI generated, but enough to fracture what little was left of Mullins' mind. He checked into a psych facility 3 days later, sedated, babbling about ghosts and fire and blood. Marcus watched him through a window, didn't feel a thing. Dixon was next, but he wasn't hiding, he was waiting. Marcus found him sitting in his car outside a hospital, chain-smoking, watching a monitor in his lap. Security feed from his building. He was trying to catch Marcus. "I know you're out there," Dixon muttered to no one. When Marcus finally confronted Jim in the parking lot, under cover of night, Dixon didn't flinch. "I didn't touch her," he said, voice hollow. "But I didn't stop it either." "No," Marcus said. "You didn't. I was scared. They would have turned on me. You chose survival over humanity." Dixon looked up. His eyes were tired. "Haunted, what are you gonna do?" Marcus raised the gun slowly, not to fire, to remind him. Dixon closed his eyes. "Just make it quick," but the shot never came. Instead, Marcus tossed something into his lap. "A hard drive. Go public," Marcus said. "Tell the world what happened, or I will. And if I do, I won't need a bullet." Dixon stared at it. "They'll kill me." "No," Marcus whispered. They'll fear you, that's better. And then he vanished. But Lanning was ready. He'd seen the signs, watched the other two unravel, and he wasn't about to be next. He'd hired private security, changed homes, switched cars, monitored phone signals. He even filed a restraining order against Marcus Hayes even though the man was officially dead. He knew Marcus was coming, and he had a trap waiting. Marcus saw it all from a distance. The layers of defense, the paranoia. He'd underestimated the sergeant. Lanning didn't just erase evidence, he covered his own sins, including one no one else had found yet. A second rape 6 years ago, buried in a sealed file. Victim, underage, immigrant, undocumented, vanished shortly after the complaint. Never testified. Never resurfaced. Marcus stared at the report for hours. His hand trembled not from guilt, but from the possibility that Alana hadn't been his first victim. Lanning was more than a corrupt cop. He was a predator, protected by the very badge meant to stop him. There would be no mercy. But just as Marcus prepared his final move, an unexpected obstacle emerged. Special Agent Lorelei Barrett. She'd worked with Marcus years ago profiling child traffickers in Georgia. Smart, methodical, no patience for bullshit. She had read the suicide report and never bought it. She tracked him using bureau-level tools and old field patterns. And one night, as he prepared to break into Lanning's compound, she caught him, gun to his back, calm voice. Don't do it, Marcus. He didn't turn around. You should walk away. You're not that man. You don't need to be. I already am. You're just late to the funeral. You kill him, and it's over for you. No redemption, no escape. Marcus turned slowly, eyes dark and sunken. Redemption isn't the goal. Balance is. I'll arrest you, she said. You know I will. He lowered his head, then offered her the USB drive with the sealed rape file. Then make it count. She took it. He walked away. She didn't follow. That night, Marcus wrote his final journal entry in the burner phone log. They tried to bury the truth. I buried the lie, but there's still one man left. And this time, he wouldn't be warned. He wouldn't be broken. He wouldn't be saved. The system had resisted. Now Marcus would bring it down with the weight of every name they tried to erase. Starting with Sergeant Kyle Lanning, ending with whatever was left of himself. Starting with Sergeant Kyle Lanning, ending with whatever was left of himself. That was the plan. The line in the sand Marcus had drawn. One final act before the curtain fell on all of it, on the lies, the grief, the man he used to be. But the past wasn't done taking in. Fear, once planted, had begun to bloom in places Marcus never expected. Trent Mullins died alone, knees against the wall of his hospital room, eyes wide open, foaming at the mouth. The official report said, accidental overdose. The coroner marked it fentanyl. But Marcus knew the truth. He had planted the fake, an unlabeled baggie slipped into Mullins' locker 3 days earlier, after sneaking past a half-asleep night janitor. A decoy, nothing more than powdered sugar and flour. Just enough to get the paranoid whispering. Enough to make Mullins unravel further, especially when a mysterious envelope appeared under his hospital bed, with one simple line, toxicology doesn't lie, but people do. Mullins had already been teetering caught between tremors and voices that weren't real. Marcus had studied PTSD long enough to know its rhythm, its push, but he hadn't expected him to break, not that fast. Not that fatally. When Marcus read the headline the next morning, his hand didn't shake, but something inside him did. Not grief. Not guilt. Something stranger. Emptiness. Mullins was supposed to see it coming, to know it was Marcus, to understand. But now he was just gone. No confession, no redemption, no final moment of reckoning, just fear, and a needle. Ray Dixon, though. He got his moment. Marcus made sure of it. It happened in a storage unit 3 miles from where Alana died. No cameras, no neighbors. The place reeked of rust and mildew. Cold enough to see your breath, silent enough to hear your sins. Dixon woke tied to a steel chair, hood over his head, wrists zip-tied, ankles cuffed. Marcus sat across from him, dressed in black, face bare, no mask, no voice modulation. He wanted Dixon to see him, to feel the eyes of the man whose life he helped destroy. You know who I am, Marcus said. Dixon didn't nod, didn't speak. He just cried. Marcus waited a full minute before sliding the recorder across the table. A red light blinked. Already lived. Tell the truth, Marcus said. Start from the night of June 18th. Every word, every scream, every lie. Dixon's lips trembled. He'll kill me. No, Marcus said softly. I might. And the silence that followed was heavier than any threat. Dixon cracked like glass under a slow thumb. He told it all. Stop. The orders, the look on Alana's face, the way Mullins held her down. The way Lanning erased the footage before backup ever arrived. And most damning of all, how Dixon falsified the radio call at Lanning's command. When it was over, Marcus leaned back, hit stop, and stood. Dixon looked up, hopeful. "You're letting me go." "No," Marcus said. "But I'm not killing you." He turned off the heater and walked out, left Dixon shivering in the dark with his own words echoing back at him. By the time someone found him 18 hours later, he was barely alive. But the confession was already online, posted anonymously, shared across forums, picked up by whistleblower watchdogs. Cop turned accomplice admits cover-up in rape murder of black woman, and Marcus T was already gone, headed for the place where it had to end, a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, remote, hidden, one road in, none out, no cell service, no neighbors. Marcus had found it 2 weeks earlier after tracking a payment Lanning made under a dummy LLC. It wasn't in his name, but Marcus recognized the signature on the lease. Lanning was hiding. But not from Marcus. From the fallout. Dixon's confession had rocked the department. Internal Affairs reopened the case. Protesters began marching. Outside City Hall, reporters started circling the story like bloodhounds around a carcass. But Marcus wasn't interested in news cycles. He wanted closure. He arrived at dawn, boots crunching frost, breath fogging, rifle slung over his back, pistol tucked into his chest holster, recorder clipped to his collar. He circled the cabin once. 2 exits, no surveillance, security lights, disabled. Inside, Lanning sat near a fire, drinking from a steel flask, as if expecting a guest. He didn't flinch when Marcus kicked the door open, just looked up and whispered, "Took you long enough." Marcus raised the gun, didn't fire. "You always did love a dramatic entrance," Lanning added. Marcus stepped forward, slow and steady. "You're not going to talk your way out." "I'm not trying to." "Then why run?" Lanning smirked. "Because ghosts like you don't knock." Marcus stepped closer. She screamed, "I know." Marcus's jaw clenched. She begged, "You heard it, you knew, and you watched." Lanning stood, slow and deliberate, no weapon in hand, just that same arrogant calm. "You think you're better than me, Marcus. You think a badge or a mission ever made you good? I did what had to be done. I kept the peace. I maintained order. You destroyed a woman. She disrespected authority." Marcus hit him hard, one punch to the jaw that sent Lanning crashing into the wall. "Say her name," Marcus growled. Lanning spat blood. "Say it." "Alana." The word was soft, and it broke something in Marcus. He pulled the gun and aimed it square at Lanning's chest. "You deserve worse than death," Lanning smiled. "Then be a man and do it." Marcus's finger hovered over the trigger, but something stopped him. A flicker of movement, a memory, Alana's voice. "Don't become what you hate." And suddenly, the rage began to dissolve. Not vanish, but pull back, just enough to see clearly. Lanning wasn't a monster. He was a man, flawed, broken, evil, but still human. Killing him wouldn't bring justice. It would bury what little of Marcus was still alive. So instead, he stepped forward and fired low. The bullet tore through Lanning's thigh. He screamed, collapsed, blood seeping across the floor. "You won't die," Marcus said. "Not today." He took the phone from his coat pocket and hit send. The video uploaded instantly. Dixon's confession, Mullins' file, Lanning's face, every lie, every cover-up, every name. Sent to journalists, civil rights attorneys, activist groups, anonymous message boards. The internet lit up within minutes. As Marcus stepped outside into the cold dawn, sirens were already faint in the distance, echoing up the mountains like ghosts returning home. He didn't run. He sat on the porch, hands on his knees, gun resting beside him, waiting not for death, for judgment. It didn't take long. The footage went viral within hours. National headlines, department-wide investigation, federal inquiry, charges filed. Lanning survived but couldn't walk again. Dixon entered witness protection after a plea deal. Mullins became a cautionary tale, a face on every addiction poster from here to Georgia. And Alana, they finally said her name. A candlelight vigil, her face on the courthouse steps, a scholarship fund in her memory. Marcus Hayes was arrested peacefully. No struggle, no words, just a quiet nod as they cuffed his wrists. In the interrogation room, an agent asked if he had any regrets. Marcus stared at the ceiling, eyes glassy, and said, "Only that she died alone." Then he leaned back and closed his eyes. Not at peace, but no longer haunted, because for the first time in months, he heard her voice again, not screaming, but laughing, soft, distant, and free. For the first time in months, he heard her voice again, not screaming, but laughing, soft, distant and free. That memory faded with the sound of steel doors slamming shut behind him. Marcus Hayes was now federal inmate for 37289. No longer Agent Hayes, no longer the ghost who haunted the men who killed his wife, just a man in a jumpsuit, sitting in a cold cell, waiting to learn what kind of justice, if any, he had actually delivered. The video detonated like a bomb. Within 12 hours it had 3 million views. Within 24, national news anchors were calling it the Marcus Hayes Files. Reddit threads exploded. Hashtags trended globally. Hashtag justice for Alana. Hashtag Hayes tapes. Hashtag broken blue. The footage was undeniable. Dixon's trembling confession, the leaked autopsy photos, the department's sealed reports with forged times, the untouched disciplinary files that proved Sergeant Kyle Lanning had shielded at least 3 prior complaints of sexual misconduct, 2 of which involved women of color. Public outrage surged. By day 3, a DOJ task force landed in the city. By day 5, a federal grand jury reopened the case. And by day 7, headlines declared, Sergeant Kyle Lanning arrested for conspiracy, obstruction, and accessory to sexual assault. They found his home ransacked by whom? No one knew. A hard drive missing. Security cameras turned off. His lawyers screamed illegal surveillance and vigilante interference. But it didn't matter. The people had seen too much. The system had no choice. Someone had to bleed, and Marcus had given them the blood trail. He could have disappeared. Again, gone dark, left the country, slipped into the same shadows that trained him. But instead, after releasing the final file, he walked into a federal field office in North Carolina, laid his gun and phone on the counter, and simply said, I'm Marcus Hayes, I'm the one you're looking for. The arresting officers hesitated, half in awe, half in fear. No resistance, no weapon drawn, just a tired man with tired eyes and nothing left to lose. They processed him quietly. No perp walk, no spectacle, a silent surrender. The charges came, swiftly, multiple counts of unlawful surveillance, breaking and entering, armed intimidation, assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful detention, cybercrimes under the Patriot Act, and obstruction of justice. Even though it was his evidence that exposed the truth, some called for clemency, others called for life. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He had exposed murderers, and he was the one behind bars. His trial never made it to court. He pled guilty to all charges. No defense, no testimony. I'm not here to argue, he said at arraignment. I came to finish what the law couldn't. The judge sentenced him to 15 years, eligible for parole after 8. Now, in a cell no bigger than the basement where it all began, Marcus sat cross-legged on a thin mattress. In his hand he held the only thing he had left of her, Alana's necklace, a small gold chain with a tiny heart-shaped locket. It had been recovered from her body, sealed in an evidence bag Marcus never let go of even as the system tried to erase her. Inside the locket was a photo, aged, faded, of the 2 of them on their honeymoon in Charleston. She was laughing. He was holding her hand like he'd never let it go. He looked at it now, the heart barely gleaming in the overhead light, and tried to remember the sound of her voice without the scream behind it. Some days he could. Most days he couldn't. Single quotes T. outside. The world had not forgotten her. On the 1-year anniversary of her death, crowds filled the courthouse steps. They held candles and signs that read, say her name, Alana, Hayes' wife, mother, human. He didn't snap. The system did. Sean spoke for the first time publicly. He stood in front of a crowd of thousands, barely 22, still grieving, still angry. My father isn't a hero, he said. He's not a villain either. He's a man who did what the system failed to do. And I don't know if that makes him right. I just know it makes him necessary. The crowd erupted, tears, applause, anger, hope. But Marcus wasn't there to hear any of it. He was 300 miles away, in a cell, staring at concrete walls and wondering, did I save her, or just lose myself? That question lingered more than any punishment. It wasn't the cell bars that haunted him. It was the memory of the man he used to be, before the rage, before the retribution, before the silence became his only god. Alana was gone, and though the world now knew her name, though Lanning would rot behind bars, and though the department was being gutted from the inside out, Marcus had paid a price no court could tally. He had crossed the line, twisted justice until it bled into vengeance, turned morality into a weapon, and in the end it hadn't brought her back. Nothing ever would. But maybe, just maybe, he'd built something in her name that would outlive the violence, the scholarship fund, the community center her church opened in her memory, the federal reforms being proposed because of her case, the women who came forward because of Marcus's leak. The cops who would now think twice. Maybe he hadn't saved her, but maybe he'd saved someone else. A guard knocked softly on the bars one afternoon. "You've got mail," he said, sliding an envelope under the gate. Marcus picked it up. No return address. Inside, a photograph, a black teenage girl standing in front of a courthouse, holding a sign that read, "I speak, because Alana couldn't," and beneath it, handwritten, "Thank you." Marcus stared at it for a long time, then folded it carefully, placed it inside the locket next to Alana's photo, and closed it with a quiet click. He stood, stretched, and walked to the small window of his cell. Outside he could hear them again, chanting her name, Alana Hayes, Alana Hayes, over and over, louder, stronger, like a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. And for the first time since the night she died, Marcus closed his eyes and allowed himself to feel something that wasn't rage, not peace, but something close, something like truth. And as the sun dipped behind the bars, casting long shadows on the cell wall, Marcus whispered to no one, "We're not done, because some ghosts don't haunt, they guard." And Marcus Hayes wasn't finished. He was just beginning.